at heart. So the CSs who are going to be chosen, I strongly believe that the public needs to introduce public participation and ensure we are part of this process of putting fresh new CSs in the picture. Also, these CSs, they need to have qualifications. Isikuwe tu CS anaekwa hapo because they have goodwill with the president. We need people who have credentials, the right credentials for it and the right experience. If it's the Ministry of Health, tunaeka hapo daktari because daktari anajua kufanya kazi, they understand the ground, they understand the problems that are there, they understand some of the solutions that can be forged moving forward, and this is a doctor who has integrity, si mtu mwenye ananunuliwa. So we need to really put pressure kwa hii mambo ya the new CSs who are going to be appointed. Tusikubali wa recycle akina Joho. I can already see tweets people asking, hey, tuweke who is this, Matiangi as the CS for Interior. Please, those old faces, they all need to go home. We want people who are capable, people who are able to do good jobs, and people who have the right credentials. We have of a lot of graduates who have very good, and Kenyans are smart, tuko na good credentials, but we don't have the opportunities to do jobs. So let's put people who have the right credentials in these positions and people who have the right experiences. I'll finish by saying, mambo ya the CSs who have just been removed. Kenyans have no idea about negative reinforcement. And for such a long time, corruption has been able to take place because we have allowed it. Tumekubali these politicians them that corruption is not something we condone in the country, then we are going to ensure that a lot of people, even in the offices, hata kama unanunuliwa, you'll really tread carefully to ensure that you're not stealing with the level of theft that we have seen in our country up until now. So that's all I have. Thank you for giving me this chance. Asanteni.
Great, thanks a lot, Akinyi. Those were very interesting comments, especially the analysis from a psychological point of view of various leaders, the president, and some of the actions that leaders have taken. I want some of us on the space to start exercising our minds around the question of what real change actually looks like. So there have been proposals from Akinyi and others about the kinds of people that we want to see at the top. But we know that government is more than just the people at the top. There's an entire civil service, there's an entire system that also are functionaries, if not perpetrators of numerous corrupt acts. So as we invite more speakers, onto the mic, hopefully we can get some comments about what government, the shape of government, and how to be able to change the government through like a deep cleanse might look like going forward. So up next, we've got about 3 speakers, and I'm going to take a short break, drink a bit of water, and then I'll be back. Tom and Mike, you can take over. But up next, let's have Abdullahi speaking, Abdullahi Halache, and then after that, Joel and Peter and Evans. All right. Abdullahi, go ahead.
Asante sana ndugu John. Mine was very short. Number one, Archbishop Desmond Tutu once said, South Africans like selling themselves short. Same here. As Kenyans, we like selling ourselves short. During this process, a lot of wonderful things have happened, and we should take that opportunity to really celebrate. What a wonderful moment to be. After 2002 elections, an opinion poll was carried out, and Kenyans were polled, and it was found out that Kenyans were the most optimistic people in the world. It's the same. I remind myself all the time that even people who fought and admire 2010 constitution, sometimes we really do not reckon with how incredibly radical this constitution is. And so, as such, I think we should take this time to breathe while we want all the wonderful things that have happened in a very short period of poisoned Kenyans' mind. It's the per diem, the disease of the per diem. What this moment has shown is that you do not need donors' money to really do wonderful things, because the Katiba is there, people are willing, people are ready to put in time to support each other to a tilt. People are there physically, people are not there. Wonderful job. Kudos to you as well. You've shown again that there is a different model, there is a different way of doing media, and it is working. People can now distinguish. People's smell tests have so advanced that they can see from far what is propaganda and what is genuine media work that requires a ton of series that you carried about agriculture. It's an amazing piece of work. We've worked together in the past on, extrajudicial execution, something that is very close to my heart. Kudos to you and the wonderful team that you've put in place to be able to do everything that you are doing. Finally, I think is the question of accountability. It's not enough. Even while we are celebrating, even while we are giving each other kudos, there are people who are still unaccounted for. There are people who are still, an administration that promised it will stop extrajudicial execution. Extrajudicial executions are taking place. In fact, today, when he was addressing the nation, I thought the first person he would give his marching orders was the IGP, the Inspector General of the Police. This police is beyond reform. We cannot waste our time being on this reform treadmill for as long as we can. What doesn't the police have? They're given money, we have the internal affairs, we have IPOA, we have everything. What are we getting? The same old police with the same rich history of egregious human rights violation today, tomorrow, and forever. And it starts from the top. There has to be some accountability. We cannot, as a country, keep on eating our young ones and expect it to change. What are we saying to the mothers of kids that have been killed during these protests, the previous protests, and the protests before that? Kids who have been, in Kariobangi, in Madare, in Mombasa, every single place. I've been documenting police extrajudicial execution for the last 5 years. Every year when that report comes out, you will cry. If you get a chance, go on Missing Voices website. You'll be able to see some of the wonderful work that other people are doing. So I think, to my mind, even while we are thinking who will come in, who will be the minister, all that kind of stuff, I think this moment deserves accountability. There are what other people will talk. I'll stop it there. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Abdullah. I don't know if I can be heard clearly by everyone. I should get a thumbs up if I'm clear. Great. Got one from Mike. So thanks, Abdullah. You raise really good questions here. Extrajudicial killings have been around for as long as we can remember. And just recently, over the past few weeks, at least 41 people have been killed by police officers. And every time I go on Hussein Khalid's profile, you see him at a burial, and that's one life that was snuffed out without a good reason. No one should be dying. So accountability. And I've been thinking about this. Just today, Mike Mushiri was arrested. And all this was happening whilst the president was acting as if he's listening to the populace. So I guess my question is this a smoke screen? Are we blinded by what we see right now and doing a victory lap that will just die off and everything will return back to the previous way of doing things right after this? And I guess I'll just ask Evans, whose hand has been up for a while, to take that question. Is this a smokescreen? Are we being blinded from the truth? Is this a distraction from something bigger? Are we making progress actually?
Thank you so much for this chance. Well, I happen to be a psychologist as well, so I'll probably bounce off what the previous Akinyi talked about a little bit about the. She profiled our president very well, and so I'll probably want to maybe delve into that a little bit and then talk about this smoke screen. So maybe just to walk you a little bit chronologically for the past 3 weeks. So when the process started, remember last year we had finance bill protests, right? And at the helm of the protest was Raila, the former prime minister. But this time, it was different because there was nobody to negotiate with. But the government, or rather the executive, had this similar playbook to use force and to use intimidation to quell the voices. But the difference was that there's nobody to negotiate with. Who is the leader? Where is this going? What is the agenda? People just came out to the street. So while they were caught flat-footed, they thought that the old playbook of scaring people will work. So if you remember the first speech of the president, if you want to look at that video, you can see his body language. He comes out, his chest is high, he looks aggrieved. If you want to know when our president is being insincere, is that his mannerism changes and he likes to lick his lips. If you've not noticed, and that means that he's thinking of an answer to tell you that will please you rather than the truth. But if you look at that speech that he made about criminals and who infiltrated the government, the parliament buildings, and that they negated what the Gen Z were doing, you can see that not at any moment did he lick his lips. He was aggrieved. He was regrouping. He was caught flat-footed, and that was the most sincere body language that I've ever seen of this president. So carry forward. The scare tactic of killing people and shooting and infiltrating the protesters with looters and people who are literally just destroying property did not work, and people came back to the street. And if you look at the international, because again we have a government that like to show dress and try to appear good on at face value. No one, I think only the Secretary General from the United Nations condemned what was happening. Nobody came in support. Nobody talked about. All the international leaders were quiet because to them as well, this was surprising. What is going on? What is happening? Okay. So we go into the second week and the protests continue. And now the president feels like he has to negotiate. He has to give us a carrot. He has to dangle for us some carrot. So what happens? He throws his own cabinet. Accountability. We want more transparency. We want heads to roll. We want the executive to know that we know the tricks. We know what has been happening. We are living in the age of information. We are living in the age of receipts. What you said 2 years ago and what you do now will be brought back to you, and we will ask you, how have you acted in these days? What is the space between what you said and what you did, and what have you done between that point A and B? Does it match what you said at point A? So when you look at this movement, it has exposed our president for who he is. It has exposed our culture for what it is. And to just talk about, for example, the Kenya Law Society president was here earlier, and she talked about the Finland saga, right? I live in Finland, and we saw firsthand what corruption can do to people. We lost, somebody died, somebody committed suicide and died because of corruption in Kenya. When the president was being interviewed about people being shot, and he said that this person was only shot by one bullet, that it was not A's bullet. For him, that was the difference. The difference was not that people got shot, people died, right? When he was pressed on how many people have died and how he can communicate to the mothers, to the parents of these children, of these Kenyans who have lost their lives, he diverted and talked about the businesses that have been lost. So we are dealing with a president who is in a survival mode right now, who has been cornered. So yes, there is a big small screen, and I always say that we have to press the pedal has to be on the ground, because you saw what happened. Was it 2 days ago, 3 days ago? The political class regrouped. But we were not taking it. Then today the government was dismissed. And we have to be careful about the language that has been used. I think somebody mentioned it here. The language is very important. The cabinet has been dismissed. They have not been fired. They've been dismissed. What does that mean? You've been dismissed pending what? You have been dismissed in lieu of what? You know? Because why have they been dismissed? We were not given a reason why have they been dismissed because of the protest that has been happening? Have they been dismissed because of the finance bill? There is no we have not been given a reason. Okay, so as it looks now, it is the most obvious smoke screen to me, because it's to buy time. It's to give us carrots, dangle for us carrots and tell, hey, bite this one and deal with it. Because what did you see after the dismissal? We all came online to discuss what has happened. But there is a bigger picture here. And as I finish, I want to point out one thing about our culture. And we have to look introspectively at ourselves, that the culture that we have created, the way into the office, they have to do everything and also pay themselves back for what they have lost during the campaigns. When I was in Kenya in 2022 at the campaign, during the campaigns, and I remember one politician dishing out money to citizens, right? And according to their insiders, he was spending about 5 million Kenyan shillings per day on campaign. All right. So how are we complicit as citizens to this, to what befalls us now? Yes, we're protesting, and this protest is led by young people, but most of us here are also from a generation that have always believed that what a politician can do to you is to bless you financially. When we are part of the problem, we also have to look at ourselves and say, how have we contributed to this culture of corruption? When you go to a government office and you want a certificate or a passport fixed for you faster, you're willing to pay 10,000 Kenyan shillings to get your passport in 1 week, while it's stipulated that it lasts for 30 days. You're complicit. You're part of it. So we also have to look at ourselves on how we've created this, because we have also taught politicians that we have a price. We can be bought. That is why you saw politicians in the beginning, when they didn't know that this will blow out to this level, they were talking about people coming with Uber and feeling entitled, and having McD, or was it Burger King or something, during protest, because they thought that they're speaking to that population on the people that they deal with. So as we go forward, we also have to look at ourselves and promise ourselves that we will be vigilant to other people, to the politicians, but also to ourselves as Kenyans, that we will not condone corruptions. We will not use our monies or our resources to quicken up things, because first of all, it makes politicians comfortable to steal money. It makes services slow down for other people, and it makes us corrupt as citizens. So we also have a responsibility in this, and it starts with us. And that is why when people go to the streets and say no, heads roll. And now we are continuing to say no to the smokescreen that is happening now, because if we relax and say, okay, so now something is happening, we're still left with the culture. We are still left with the structures. We are still left with the constitution that is not being followed. We are still left with MPs who are inept, not performing, held hostage by the executive, in bed with the executive. We are left with a judiciary that doesn't work. Cases backtracked and loaded into 3-4 years in line. So let's look at also the culture that we have created and start to walk back and correct the things. Thank you so much. I yield back.
All right. Thanks, Evans. I think we'll pass the mic now to Nay. You've been on the line for a bit. Tell us what you think about all this, Nay. You have the mic now. You could unmute.
Hi everybody. I hope I know everyone is feeling good and everything. And yes, it's a win. A win is a win, at the end. But it's not a genuine win, because if firing this CS and listening to us is what he wanted to do, he would have done from kitambo sana. Angeanza kitambo, kabla watu hawajauliwa, kabla watu hawajashikwa. Tunaona watu bado wanashikwa for no good reason, just because we all know they are outspoken. Alipoanza hiyo speech yake, alianza kusema sijui makazi, sijui nini, vitu ambazo hazina maana, hazina msingi. He's been talking about these same things over and over and over. Like literally what he's doing, he's just gaslighting us, like proper gaslighting. Yeah. And it's not that he doesn't know what he's doing. He does, but he knows he needs to buy time. That's what I feel. And I think from the lady who spoke earlier, the psychologist, he's buying time. Jana alikuwa sijui wapi akasema kila kitu tunafaa kufanya kikatiba, tungoje hadi 2027 ndio tuweze kumbadilisha, ama kubadilisha tumweke mtu ambaye tunamtaka. But we all know by the time 2027 reaches, all the outspoken people, like what we are doing right now, will not be there. He is buying time. And I think right now, yes, let's celebrate the win, but let's push harder and harder. On Tuesday, we come out, we do all that needs to be done for this, whether he is going or the system needs to be changed, but something needs to be done. Personally, I am not advocating for anyone in the government, whether they were in the government or. For me, we need systems that work. It's very simple. If the systems are there, it doesn't matter who is going in there. We don't even have to look at their CV. We don't have to. We don't have to be sahi. Kila mtu ako ngangari. Si mamangu, si dadangu, si kila mtu Kenya mzima na nje. Tumesimama tu hivi. We can't even focus on other things in life because we are being. I don't want to use that word, but we're being done that. We need to do better. And the only way to do better is to have systems that can work without us being hyper vigilant on everything that the government is doing. It's tiring. Personally, it's tiring. I have small kids. I cannot even fathom of the life they're going to have in the next, couple of years with the way things are going. That being said, I am still very, very angry. We have lost way too many people in this, young boys. We saw that kid, the pictures were like, this is bad. This guy is not doing anything to favor us. This win, quote unquote, that he is giving us is nothing but for him to buy time to come back at us harder and tighter. We need to be prepared. Like, let's just all be prepared. I hope we are all in this together and we'll go strong ahead. Another thing, just the last thing, I'm not going to say much so that other people can speak. Wazazi wetu, this is no longer a Gen Z demographic thing that is going on in Kenya. No, this is a Gen Z ideology. We need to realize kuna watu bado kwa ground, they don't understand what we are doing. They're still like, mbona mnapigana, mbona. they have no idea. Civic education is super important. Hata kule unaenda kufunguliwa gate na mtu unamuuliza umesikiaje habari? Wewe unafikiria vipi? Let's start. Take as a personal initiative to do as much civic education to the people around you. And if you're able, and if you have the platform, spread it as much as possible, because that is the only way that we can be able to go where we need to go. My mom, sorry, I'm just going to use a personal experience so that I hope, because I know so many people are in the same place. My mom was like, wewe uko na watoto wawili, mbona unaenda kwa street? Ukiuliwa, ukifanyika nini? Hawa watoto watakuwa na nani? Hawatakuwa na wazazi? Nene. Nikamuuliza, kwani sasa ndio watakuwa na wazazi? Mimi sasa sina chochote. I'm hustling up and down. There is literally, to any other common mwananchi, hakuna pesa. Lakini nikiangalia hivi, nikipita hivi kwenye barabara, majumba yanajengwa, sijui malls yanajengwa, unashangaa haya, hii pesa yote inatoka wapi? Nikipita kwenye barabara, mimi na mkokoteni yangu napita kwenye barabara, yale magari yananipita, latest 2024, 2023, they are costing millions. And literally, if I follow that car, I can literally tell you, hii pesa imetoka wapi? Because hiyo nyumba inaingia na joni ya nani? Na ukiangalia pesa imetoka wapi? Corruption. Imetoka kwa ministry huyu, kwa ministry, like literally every cent that is inatuzunguka tunaweza ona inatoka wapi. Nikamuuliza mamangu ya kuwa sahi akiwa mgonjwa, alhamdulillah, I'm thanking God, she's still healthy and she's still, in very good shape. But sahi akigongwa na ugonjwa mmoja ama Mwenyezi Mungu something happens and she gets cancer, familia yetu yote will take 10 steps back financially to be able to cater for her. This is not just ati ni kitu inatu affect ati ni ile mambo ya ni wewe unapiga story ni watu wamelipwa sijui. No. This is affecting each and every person in this country, and we need to show them. Sometimes you just have to show them with examples that they relate to. Because when I told my mom that akiwa mgonjwa sahi kila mtu kwa familia yetu tutarudi 10 steps back financially, she was like, but then ni kweli kwa sababu NHIF haifanyi kazi, sijapata pension yangu. That clicked in her head. So this civic education that needs to be done, let it be done. Take it as a personal responsibility and teach as many people as possible. Just show them that, what we are doing, we are not doing for ourselves. We're doing it for Kenya. Finally, we need a Kenya that functions. Finally, we are the most amazing people out there who are working. I've worked outside this country, and I used to panda rank because of how hard I work, how I think, how they're like, oh my God, we just need more Kenyans in this company. No, I didn't want to work there. I came back home because I know home is home. And I need my home to work, and I need my home to function so that my kids can also stay here. This is a beautiful country with beautiful people. You should not go to the dogs. That's all. Asanteni sana.
Thanks, Nay. You speak very emotionally about this, and we feel deeply about this terrible situation that we live in at the moment. So thank you for raising those crucial points. Now, I'd like to throw in a question that John Allen asked earlier. What would an ideal Kenya look like for you? And not just an ideal Kenya, but a government look for you. I like to call this, and I'll answer the second part of the question, which is our responsibility as citizens. I like to think that this shouldn't be thought of as a sprint, but more as a marathon where we have to constantly be engaged in the political space, we, our kids, and the generation that follows them, because the fight against terrible leadership and corruption is a never-ending fight. You can never stop fighting. So I'd like to ask the person who's going to speak next, who is Angeline, what would an ideal Kenya look like for you, Angeline? I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Hello, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I think you read my mind, because while I was requesting to speak, I had in mind to just give my own opinions regarding the next steps. What can we do? How can we improve our country? So I'm a businesswoman, I'm not a politician, which means my points today are going to be focused on the economy. So my first point that I will give, which is very, very important, I think the president, if he will still remain as our president, he needs to implement economic policies that can put more money in the pockets of common mwananchi. First of all, he should introduce a minimum wage. It is very, very unfortunate that a normal mwananchi, most of the mwananchis, they're being paid salaries that they cannot even afford to get basic needs. This needs to change. Each mwananchi needs to take responsibility. If you're going to employ someone, you also have to pay them a fair salary that they can afford at least basic needs. This is possible. And if you cannot employ someone, if you cannot be able to pay them a fair salary, do not employ anyone. So, because I think it's logic. If a common mwananchi has a bit of money in their pockets, the economy will boost itself. Of course, because they will have more money to spend to pay their bills and to pay taxes. So I think it's a high time, as the world is changing. We cannot depend on everybody paying someone anything and anyhow they want. It's time that the government introduces a minimum wage. That's the first important thing. The second important thing that has to happen, the president needs to explain to us at each economic phase which policies is he implementing and why. Personally, I've observed our economy and the economic policies of the president. I mean, not only him, even our ex-president, I have never understood, because no one comes out and explain, is he implementing contractionary or expansionary policies, and why? Explain to us, how are they using the money they collect from wananchi, the fiscal policies? They need to be clear, and I believe that the Gen Zs are now doing that very well. They have to come out and explain explicitly every little step they take with the money that they collect from the common wananchi. And that is how our economy can improve, and we will be able to also pay our debts. Also, the monetary policies, they need to be clear. Sometimes I also observed the monetary policies are different from the fiscal policies, which they conflict. And I believe the economy cannot work best when both policies conflict. So personally, like I said, I'm not a politician, I'm a businesswoman. I am more focused on the economy. And my last point would be, we have made so many very amazing points here. How can these points reach the table of the president? Because I believe we speak here, but I hope that he can really be told all these things so that he can take action. And the first action would be removing everyone from his cabinet. We go through new election. He appoints qualified people who are competent, qualified, and they also have real life experience in the jobs. You don't just get a job because you're there to do a job. You're doing a job because you're qualified to do it. You have not only the academic, but you have also the real life experience to execute your duties. So thank you so much. I hope you have understood my points. My points are mainly points are mainly focused on the economy. Minimum wage has to be introduced. If there will be no minimum wage, everyone can pay anyone whichever amount they want. Unfortunately, it will be the same story. Watu wanaumizana, kuna wale wana take advantage of the others. I think the next Kenya that we want to have is where everyone is fair, especially when it comes to paying someone. Because if you don't earn enough money to even buy your basic needs, no matter what we will do, what changes we will make, the economy and the livelihood of our communities, they will never change. We will still remain poor, and we will have no focus. We cannot pay our bills, we cannot pay our debts, and etc. Thank you so much. I will mute.
Thanks, Angeline. Thanks, Angeline. So accountability, better fiscal policies, and money in the people's pockets. Those are very crucial points you're raising. I'll ask the same question to Ken. I'm curious to hear what you think, Ken.
Thank you, and I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
I mean, a lot has been said, but I think I came in when Angela was speaking, and what she said was spot on in terms of short-term policies versus long-term, rather actions. Short-term, I think this push that has begun must continue. So, beginning with immediate stuff like accountability on abductions and killings, even if we were promised that there'd never be an extrajudicial killing. Having good CSs who have proven track records who replace the ones who've been fired today, and much more. Demanding an apology for the killings that happened, the resignation of the IG of police, and much more and much more. But I want to go to long term, and long term, I think the people of Kenya have already made a determination through their direct mandate as the sovereign people of the country, is that we do not want, or rather people do not want Ruto as their president. Now, everything that has happened up till now has been done legally. The protests were legal. From the citizen side, protesting was legal. Demanding and going to the streets was legal. Demanding for accountability was legal. All these things have been done legally, and so that needs to continue. And the question then becomes, how do you, number one, legally remove a president like Ruto from power? And number two, how do you ensure that the mistakes that have been made, not just in his presidency, but over the past 60 years, because that has been our history, are not repeated? Number one, to form government, you need an army of tens of thousands of people. I think, as John Allen was saying before, it's not just the president at the top. It's a whole army of MPs, CSs, governors, MCAs who need to be elected in office and then make appointments in these parastatals, ministries, etc., to actually drive change, right? And so that's the realization that we will need to come to at some point in this long-term conversation. And that means that, in as much as the organization right now is leaderless and tribeless and partyless and ageless, at some point they will need to have some organization that, number one, has competent individuals at the top who can organize, who can recruit, who can raise money to then defeat people who have been blatantly stealing for the past decades, right? And then go to an electorate and legally remove a bad and decades of bad governance and leadership. I don't just speak to Ruto's presidency. So that needs to happen. How it happens is a different conversation. It's a much deeper conversation, and I don't think we can get to that level in this space. But at some point, we will need to legally remove bad leadership, and that only happens when we come to this realization that army of people who are competent to drive this change. And and there are people in Kenya. I mean, we speak about our human resource and our human capital as being some of the best in the world. And I believe that's true. And I think this is one of the moments that those people would have to step up and at least take this country somewhat in the right direction. It might not be perfect in the next 2 or 3 years, but it will have to happen. The step in the right direction will have to come at some point. I think that's it for me.
Yeah. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Ken. Thank you. I'd like to bring in, I think it's Joe. Joe, you've been on for quite a while. Yeah, you should unmute, but just share your vision for Kenya. And aside from all of it, I'd like you to tell us how you think we should change things from on a wider scale, because I'm just looking at this and it's the CSs who have changed, and we still have the same police service that killed over 41 people. We have the same Inspector General of Police. We have the same people in Parliament who are clapping as people were being murdered in the streets. So this is just a change at the highest level that might not mean change down to where we live and money in our pockets. So what do you think we should do, Joe? And briefly, because tuko dakika za lala salama hapa, we have like 13 more minutes. So I'll pass the mic around so everyone can speak for at most 2 minutes each, and let's make this worthwhile. Joe, you have the mic. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope you guys can hear me clearly.
Yes.
Yes. So just briefly to say my vision and give a way forward on a broader perspective. Number one, for me, my vision for Kenya would be, number one, a country that adheres to the rule of law. That is the first thing that we need to think of as a country, because everything that we keep talking about in circle starts from adherence to the rule of law. If we adhere to the rule of law, our constitution, and follow it to the letter, that is an ideal country for us. Number two, I think that we need to have independent constitutional bodies added to the current existing ones that can help in drafting our economic policies. I think leaving this blanketly to the executive and all that has messed us up. I feel like we don't have a clear economic vision, just like the one that we had, the Vision 2030. I think that each and every president who comes with their own vision and all that, something that is political to them and all that. We need to have a clear roadmap that is known, that even the next president will be judged based on this roadmap, and we know that the country is heading in a certain direction. Because currently what is happening economically is, between 2013 to date, we are suffering from debt. And most of this debt, number one, they have not been taken by adhering to the constitutional provisions of national debt. So we are suffering for people who have decided to just not follow the constitution. And that is something that is not supposed even to be there in the first place. It's not even supposed to be there. And just to mention this, I think one demand that we need to add to our list of demands is a commission of inquiry for our public debt to date, from 2013 to date. We need to have that. We need to have a public commission of inquiry, just like the one that we had for Goldenberg, so that we understand how this debt has been taken. We want to see all the debt that has been taken in the budget, because that is what the constitution requires. We want to see all that in the budget, and which project those debts we took went to, so that we can clear the air in that, because we will not, that is the bigger problem that we have. Finance bill was being brought in because of debt. That is the bigger problem that we have. And as I've heard, other people have also talked about, we are paying debt that maybe we might not even be owing. So that is something that we need to demand a public commission of inquiry so that we settle the
Joe,
issue of debt and know how we are going to handle that.
Joe, I'm going to have to cut you off. I'm going to have to cut in.
Thank you,
And
thank you.
thank you for your views. Thank you for your views. That is certainly an important thing that we should be focusing on. The how is the most important part of your answer, but it's certainly something that we should be looking into. And we have institutions that were set aside for exactly that job. If they were effective, they would be doing that. But that's another conversation that we can have in another space. Catherine, I'll give you 2 minutes. You're up.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. So I'd love to echo what everyone has said, like sort of expand the conversation a bit within the 2 minutes, as precise as I can be. So one, of course, I mean, my sincerest condolences to everybody who has been murdered. I feel like the aspect of language matters a lot. We cannot just say, people lost their lives.
Am I the only one losing Catherine, or is she buffering on all our sides?
Sure.
Yeah, I think she's buffering for all of us.
Okay. Catherine, we keep losing you. I'm afraid we'll have to pass the mic to someone else. We keep losing you. Evans, you have the mic.
National financing institutions and the critical role that they play in terms of just like guiding our fiscal policies. And I think for me, that is the one element of this conversation that is kind of, for me, I feel like it's getting lost, maybe in translation. In a way, and I get so concerned because we do not decisively talk about the role of IMF in this conversation. We do not.
I lost her again. I don't know if that's just me again, but Evans, you have the mic. She dropped off. Evans, you have the mic. Yes, 2 minutes, please, sir.
Good evening. Great to be here. John Allen, African Censored. Thank you very much. The way forward for this country, number one, we have to think about the size of government. The size of government is not tenable. We have to reduce the size of parliament, the size of the executive, the number of counties. Because if we don't do that and achieve what I will call our Italian moment, we will be collecting revenue, increasing revenue collection, but most of it goes to paying debts. Secondly, we need to have an audit, like most speakers are saying. We need to have an audit of what has been borrowed in the name of Kenya. Gladly, we have a case in court. The judgment is coming sometime in September. Please keep your eyes on the ball. Let's see what the courts will be telling us with the case that is currently in court. We should have a declaration whereby the state will be compelled to divulge what has been borrowed in the name of Kenya. Because if we don't know what we are borrowing and for what it has been used, then we will continue burying ourselves in this black hole we find ourselves in. Thirdly, and most importantly, what are we learning in our schools? Education. If you look at countries like Japan, China, those are two examples I'll use for purposes of time today. China is guided by the philosophy of Confucianism. Japan is guided by the philosophy of Shintoism. The pervading influence of those two philosophies in either country is that persons are morally upbraided, morally guided, and the essence of patriotism is infused. people go into government knowing that I am serving my country. I am loyal in my country. In this country, Kenya, who are your role models? Sudi, Sonko, these purveyors of hogwash and nonsense on on media, people vomiting all over us. What do we study in class? Decrepit and useless education that has no purpose for this country's future. We have some deep thinking to do. Thank you very much.
Deep thinking indeed. Deep thinking indeed, Evans. I'll pass the mic now to Minimal. You have 2 minutes. Please keep it tight and
Yeah.
concise. Tell us what you
Thanks.
think.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So I'll start from the last part, the path ahead. I think it's obvious from the previous speakers, and I don't want to repeat what they've said, but I think the key items there are: number one, we need to resolve the debt issue. We need to determine whether the lenders are, enslaving us, and really, did we deserve to take that debt? And so that's something that I think we can't overemphasize. Then the second thing that I think is also where the debt goes. I mean, it's financing corruption. So a big issue that again that really needs to be resolved is corruption. But yeah, some things that I think the previous speakers have not talked about, I think, is to zoom out a little bit and ask ourselves, why are we here? So number one, I think, is we have a youth bulge. I mean, we have 50 million people under the age of 50 out of a population of 55. 40 million of those are under the age of 35. 20 million of those are under the age of 18. So really, even if this government was handed down to somebody else today, that problem is a serious problem that, a source of social unrest and instability in the country. So I think if we don't resolve that in the long term, I think we have a big problem. And with this youth bulge, I think there's an Israeli writer, Yuval Noah Harari, who's written a couple of books, and the technology aspect of what's coming, social media, artificial intelligence, all these things are taking away